Thank you everyone for coming, especially post lunch. I know it was very tasty on my end. So today we're talking about pretty much the entire breadth of mobile ad production, how we decide to go from doing that with an agency to actually bringing that fully in internally. We're talking about basically building an ad production house internally at our studio, what that meant, what type of KPIs we're trying to hit with that, why we would do that, and then how this differs just from, say, additional art resources or traditional marketing resources. It's quite a bit involved, and actually it's very interesting on my end because this was a role that I originated with my company. But first, for a bit of background, hi, I'm Jamie, and I work with Bytro Labs. Is anyone here familiar with us or our games? No? Then you are about to learn a lot about grand strategy titles. I bumped into that. Wow. So basically, we have several main titles: Supremacy 1914, Iron Order 1919. We work with our sister studios, such as one big IP title in the works with one, and then another Conflict of Nations World War III with sister studio Dorado. And these titles are grand strategy games, which means that basically if you've played the board game Risk, imagine that, but in a mobile and PC game form that you can play with up to 500 different players at once. It's been, the oldest one of these titles has actually been around since 2009 and is still going strong with new updates today, which I just think is very cool. And in 2022, they decided that they very specifically wanted to bring in me. So for a bit of background on me, hi, that's me. This is also me. I'm originally from Victoria, BC, Canada, but I now live in Stade, Lower Saxony, Germany. Bytro is actually based in Hamburg. My background was actually in commercial video production, but I've been in or around the video game industry in some capacity, whether it's covering it as a journalist or actually working in it, since I was 15 years old. I'm 26 now, so quite a long time. Some of the things that I've had to do to adapt to this position is kind of wear a lot of hats and learn a lot of things. I kind of really bridged the gap as a media and games marketing producer, which is a long title. That means I bridge the gap between art marketing and traditional mobile UA marketing, to then have this position where pretty much anything that's related to advertising, whether it's how our characters look in ads, whether it's ads themselves, whether it's even in some cases, even still having to work with agencies for some bigger projects that have quite a condensed time scale that just me and my assistant can't just, and art resources can't just kind of do on our own. It's all of that condensed into one role. So it's wearing a lot of hats, but I quite enjoy it because it means I get to go in and not just be staring at numbers in Excel sheets, so there's a lot of that, but also be creative every day. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. That's the rundown on Bytro, but fun fact, I just gave that to you, so we can skip that. Now, when I talk about creative production, I don't just mean like TikTok creative, so that is a big part of it. I don't just mean like creatives you'd see from, say, platforms like Moloko or Meta platforms. This does encompass those, but it can go even bigger, such as, here's a look at a full-on trailer that was done internally. And now play. Nope. And now play. Just imagine it's playing right here and that it's very cool. Wow, amazing. There's like a tank running and there's text. You know, like a movie. Yeah, amazing, shocking. No, now let's talk about key metrics, because of course there is that UA background and we work very closely with our marketing team. For those out of the loop, UA means user acquisition. That can be everything from generating new players from, in the broadest terms, generating new players from platforms to even retargeting older players who maybe have stopped playing. Metrics we look at always are IPM, which is impressions per million, CTR, click-through rate, and of course 7-day ROAS. So that just means return on ad spend. I'm sure a lot of people know this, but as I cover creative stuff, I'm never too sure. The values we're examining are familiar across all titles, and of course, with this YMMV, your mileage may vary. Now, how we measure on my end, when we talk about what makes a creative effective, obviously we need a way to not just look at individual things from each platform, but to aggregate them, because quite frankly, if I had to do that on my own and pretty much do a marketing manager's job on top of what I do, I would go insane. So instead, I want to just mention the Apps Flyer creative tool, which pretty much we input the data from our apps, it tracks them in real time. This isn't the only tool out there that can do that. Before we were using Apps Flyer, we were actually using Iron Source Luna, which is owned by Unity, and then switched from that because Unity. But this is really powerful for me because it means that I can just at a very quick glance see what's doing well, whether it's top spending or even trending, and just kind of have that at a quick glance. So as for how we brought it internally, what's surprising is with that, if you look at it on my end, a lot of what we did was actually bringing in more so traditional commercial production house capabilities. That's bringing in pro video editors. That's on my end, for example, making sure I'm familiar with, say, things like color grading or NLE best practices or dealing with Adobe and their many, many questionable updates. It even means After Effects and being able to work well with that. Now, these are things that you could, in theory, outsource to a production house. However, that has time. That means that you have to then make a brief for every individual project. And that also means that when you have it internally, we can discuss feedback on what we want in real time using things like Frame.io or whatnot, which is very powerful on my end. Now, what tech do we use? What also kind of happened with this, and you may have seen this, is last year we actually did a charity live stream event for the first time. That kind of came from my background with setting it up and whatnot. But what's surprising is that as we are running that full breadth, and that means that even in some cases, sometimes we even do cross into social media content stuff. Sometimes we're just shooting things that require like shots of people playing the games or whatnot. Like imagine recording someone playing on their phone with another phone directly over the shoulder. And you kind of want to do that, you might say, oh, but that will look a little crappier than, say, a DSLR, to which I say, exactly. But we do actually have some professional equipment on hand, and actually we have one of the meeting rooms at our office that is pretty much a convertible studio room. Like we have like a pro lighting setup, and we have very nice, oh goodness, what was it, like Scarlett solo setup in there that can pop up. And whenever we say want to do live streams at, say, the launch of a new thing, or do some of the ones we've done with creators, as you can see, there's even some overlap of influencer marketing there. We have those capabilities, but also just having that tech on hand is nice, just from my point of view, because I like using it. Now, you don't actually need to go super expensive. Wow, that got cut off. But basically, the gist on this one is that then when you have this, so I've heard the term creative production manager or creative producer on hand, you're then going to want to actually start making the ads. Now, what that can mean is actually scripting things out. I know a lot of people will be like, yes, I can use ChatGPT for that. No, please don't. People can tell. But you know, you can use that for idea generation, right? But you can iterate on scripts. You can then send these off, and if you don't want to produce it all internally, then your producer can then start coordinating with actors. That can either be by going through an agency, or what has actually really helped a lot for some of the more niche, weird ideas is Fiverr. Sourcing actors from Fiverr has actually been very powerful for us, and it's really interesting as well, just the breadth of stuff you'll get on Fiverr that otherwise would be a little more complex to get. For example, we did a test a while back where, how do we put it? We got a guy who sounded very similar to a certain US president with a very distinctive voice. Obviously not going to say that because, we can't say his name in the ad. But, powerful stuff like that. And actually, if I remember right, did quite well. Now, you may also wonder, something that you also need to keep in mind when doing this production internal, because I'm assuming a lot of folks won't be coming at this directly with a full commercial setup, is audio cleanup, because something I've heard a lot in regards to whether you're doing company streams or social content or commercial content is no matter what your budget is, if you can put it anywhere first and foremost, put it on decent audio. Get some decent mic setups. I'd recommend Adobe Speech Enhance, actually, which can sometimes make it a little crunchy on the top end, but it's online, you pop your audio in, and then, how do I put it? If it's super muddy and awful sounding, it won't make it sound amazing, but if there's a little bit of noise back there, or at least get it to a good baseline where it's easier to work with. I want to mention NLEs if you're wondering about software that you then need to set up. Any production folks you bring in, get them an Adobe subscription. If they're working with 3D animation, Blender, we do have recently gone to some 3D ads. It's funny, more UGC, user-generated style clips. We're doing better up until last year, and now this year it's all 2D and 3D app animations that seem to be really doing the best. Something that I've noticed that's interesting though is I want to mention DaVinci Resolve for if you're working with people, because in my opinion, if you want to do a lot of color grading or color correction, I find that to be a little more robust. But of course, everyone who works with these has their preferences. Another thing I want to mention, and this is something that was mentioned to me a lot very early on, so I want to mention an anecdote, which is early on when I started at Bytro, I want to mention we were very well kitted out, but for the longest time, my role was just me. So it's like, wow, how many ads are we producing? How many things are we going to have out there? How many things? Because of course, when you're working with mobile marketing, you've always got to keep that pipeline with something new coming through it. We're talking some weeks where between myself and some of the agencies we work with, I think we peaked in January of this year with 52 different concepts going into testing in 1 week, which was quite a lot. But for the longest time, we're like, how can we make it even more efficient? What can we invest in? What tools can we invest in? And I would always say, please just give me more hands. I just need more hands on deck. And that's where Paul comes in, who we call him my assistant. He's actually a junior marketing artist who focuses strictly on this stuff. And he is so good. He is so good at what he does. Even if you can just bring someone on to help with that on a freelance basis. Now, of course, that obviously reaches a max point at some point, no matter how many people you have. At some point, you've basically built an ad agency, and that's not what we're doing here. What we're wanting to do is bring in enough of those capabilities to make it so that we can work and iterate on new ideas in-house, and then leave room for the bigger things instead of outsourcing absolutely everything, which is what happened before I came in. Because a lot of these edits we're doing aren't exactly the most complex, especially when they were UGC style. Now, I want to mention the different types of content we're working with. This is an actual ad we ran, by the way, and that is a real comment. And I want to mention these because there's UGC, which is user-generated content, stuff that's similar to what someone would actually put on, say, TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, something that you'll scroll and you'll be like, it'll take you a few seconds and you'll be like, wait a minute, is that an ad? We have animations, which are more typically what you'd expect. That can be anything from the map animations I talked earlier to like the Hero Wars stuff you see on Facebook. But there's also statics. Now, statics can be run on a lot of platforms like this, but this can even turn to stuff like banner ads or whatnot. I love this ad so much, by the way. I just love this concept. There's another similar one we did, actually. Is it okay if I go off on like this concept for a minute? Because I love statics like this that are just ridiculous. There was one we did similar where it was like the Windows XP Microsoft Paint window and the game logo. And it was just someone wrote out, "Our artist quit, please download our game." And I eat stuff like that up. And hopefully our players do too. They're a fickle bunch. And next slide. And next slide. Next slide. Now this is what I was talking about with map animations. It's not as big as it was supposed to be, but notice how it's very dynamic. There's a lot of units on screen because of course we work in military strategy games. Actually, this is an asset that's worked very well for us, which is having an actual hand on screen. Their mobile things. Something that I really love tracking, by the way, and that's kind of a pain to set up, is what I like to call element tracking, which is basically where when you upload your clip, you put various tags on it. Like, if it has a person on screen, you put person on screen. If you have a hand on screen, you have hand on screen. You have whether or not it has an end card or not. And then we run variants of that against each other because I know I said earlier, yes, not getting fully bogged down the data, obviously, but having that data on hand is so useful and so powerful and so cool for testing, especially when trends like that change over time and when we think we've really gotten it down to a science and then trends start to change a bit. So it's always a process, but I just find it fascinating. Now, we still do actually work with some outside studios. This can support production internally or give us more room for testing. A lot of times when we do actually work with these outside studios that we are still ideating internally, we are still discussing the scripts, we're even potentially storyboarding internally. However, when it comes time, and usually it's animation, but sometimes it's UGC bulk orders if we need to support, say, leading up towards like Christmas time. But with things like this, it's really nice because oftentimes with these studios, you can even make reoccurring contracts. With some of the ones we work with, it's like, yes, we're going to put X amount of thousand euros a month down, and then we're for sure going to get, 5 concepts produced. I'm going to go through some of these. I want to mention this still falls into internal because at the end of the day, I'm still getting all of these sent to me and I'm still leaving feedback. And the marketing folks are too. But, it's a collaborative process. Next slide. It worked. Now, testing is key. I've talked about this a bunch, and what this should say is not just testing, but iterate. What I find really amazing working in the mobile space and working on mobile ads is how concepts can come back again. I do YouTubing as a hobby, and the YouTube space, we call that evergreen content. It's your content that will somehow, for some reason, always have relevancy to it. This could be, for example, we have one ad concept that we call internally the 10090, where it's someone just playing one of our games and then just going through the various countries he's gone against and why he would pick that one or not, and it's just 3 of them. And we've used the same script, and we do a refresh of it once or twice a year because it just keeps working. And what's funny is we've tried to do other versions as well of slightly different scripts, and for some reason, they never do quite as well. But this one script, it's magical. And I honestly, according to data, I really think it comes down to just the countries featured in it, because it has like Cuba and Chile in it, which are very interesting to internet people, especially with all the long Chile memes I've been seeing since I was a kid. Now, let's talk about what's possible. We're about to look at some ads that were not produced by agencies, but were actually fully produced in-house. Now, these ones, and tech, I would really love y'all's help with this if it doesn't play again. This is something that took 3 weeks from ideation to testing, and I hope y'all enjoy it. Let's see, does it work? Nope. Please work. Please clap. It's not. Oh, is it just showing up as a link? Could I troubleshoot that real quick? Cool. Hold for a sec. Thank you all for bearing with me. And this is why I brought this with me. Yes. Manage sharing. Oh, look, I came prepared for this. My first year that I spoke at huh? The mic button. Oh, sorry. My first year I was speaking at DevGAMM a few years back, actually. I was giving my talk, and the laptop they had on hand actually blue screened in the middle of my talk, which taught me very early on, you know, you got to be prepared for everything. Oh yeah, like maybe it was just something a bit too secret. Oh come on, share that. Come on, share. Oh, it can work. Yes, continue. Opening that. All right, and I'm going to have to do this again with the next clip. But I think we finally got that working. Can we try now? Can you refresh? Thank you for bearing with me. If not, I can. If not, we can just pretend. Wow, amazing. Again. Thank you. Like, you know, I can do like an interpretive dance. You know, what if the real ads were the? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. This is on YouTube, right? You know, smash that like button. Any sponsors I should mention? Oh yeah. There it is. But yeah, all of that was done completely internally with a team of the core of animation was actually done by Paul, who I mentioned earlier, my assistant. And then end card and such and finalizing and revision, a lot of that went through me. So that was a 2-person team over 3 weeks making that entire thing, which is actually now in testing. And now here is another ad. I'm so sorry. But, you know, I think this one is just... I think this one is just a static here. We do actually have an animated version, but it looks like just a static version. Oh, brilliant. You're a real one. So let's grant that access. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, you use the code Jamie12 for 10% off your next wait time. Yeah, for next DevGAMM. Yeah, that's an offer I'm allowed to make, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's for sure.
I promise this is the last video I have embedded.
Is this a static picture as well?
Yeah. Oh. Now, here's a fun fact about this ad. This ad was for an update for Supremacy that came out literally a month ago. And you can tell that this was actually an early version of the ad because if you look closely at the gameplay, you'll see some beta text on it, which isn't in the final, but, you know, just a little fun fact for this version that, you know, I'm sharing all the cool secrets. Now, a note about communication. It's a two-way street, and I do want to mention this when bringing creatives in-house because a lot of folks who come from more of the development side or more marketing numbers side, they like to think, yes, this is a creative. They can think creatively about things. I can say, make it shine, and they'll know exactly what I mean. We do not. Please be very, very clear in your communication. If you mean, if make it shine means, yeah, I kind of want that glow to be like a little bit brighter and maybe like have a little red tint, just say that. It's okay. It's not pedantic. It's just honest. And this is something that that I've talked to my counterparts at other studios as well, because there are a few of us in the industry now. We're a slowly growing bunch, us marketing producer people. And they're like, yes, please. It's like, be as clear as possible with us. Like, have y'all heard the KISS acronym? When talking to one of us, keep it simple, stupid. Next up. So yeah, that's pretty much the deal with it. It's all, if you want some terms to avoid when giving feedback on things, and do keep in mind, giving feedback on creatives as a non-creative is still very important and almost even more valuable because, of course, when we're working on something, we're in the trenches. You'd be surprised how many seemingly glaring flaws that can pass through multiple drafts of a thing when you're the only one looking at it. So that is crucial, and actually that's why, say, at my company, we have weekly syncs and bi-weekly creative meetings where we go through creative processes and even field ideas, which I think is really cool. That said, if you're giving feedback on a piece and you say, spruce it up, or I want it to pop, or worst of all, if it's a social-centric piece and you say, I want it to go viral, am I allowed to swear here? I will fucking sob. Be clear, be concise, be concrete. Now, let's also talk about balancing stats and creativity. And that, by the way, is the logo from the charity stream we did last Pride Month, which I was very proud of because we brought literally nearly a dozen different creators in and to play a round of one of our games and raise money for charity. And it was fantastic. Now, with testing, of course, you don't always want to get bogged down with numbers, but in that same thing, the numbers will guide you. The numbers are not a destination, but they are guides. They are very important and across all platforms. That said, it's also okay to make creatives with certain platforms in mind. What works well on TikTok might not necessarily work well on Meta platforms, might not necessarily work on GAC or Moloko. Also, though, what is trending? What are trends that you can follow? But also on that note, and here's the balance you got to strike, what do you think could be trending? Because sometimes you really just need that room to test. Now, of course, that depends on budgets and time frames and workload that's currently on the creative side. But all things to keep in mind. Second off, how are you measuring key aspects? Are you doing that aspect tracking I talked about? Are we measuring for IPM or CTR or ROAS? And also, always be looking to try new modes of production. I know I thought it was really interesting when YouTube first started talking about short form ads, and I got the question of, oh, well, do you think stuff that does well on TikTok could do well there? To which I said, I don't know, maybe. But, you got to test these things. And not every platform will be a winner. You don't have to stick with every platform. And, of course, now we're getting more pure marketing side. But, again, when it comes to being a marketing producer, these are things that we got to also stay up to date on, because if we're just making stuff that's completely uninformed or that we want but that isn't necessarily rooted in the reality of trends, and that's also not good, or the reality of numbers or trends or well-formed hypotheses, I should say. I do want to note on AI, especially because I'm curious, was anyone here at the talk I gave on AI and creative and ethics at Gamescom 2023 for the Gamescom Congress? No? Okay. Well, either way, I thought it was very important to mention this here because there is actually a lot of very interesting stuff AI-wise, especially in terms for localization, and idea generation, and even like the one good thing to come out of art, I will say, is like if just as like creating like a first form reference for like if someone from marketing is like, hey, I think this will work great, what do you think? And they send me like an AI made reference for the initial idea, that's fine. However, if we're talking about ads fully generated by AI or fully edited by AI, even though I know Adobe keeps trying to push this as something that could happen, it seems, with their updates. I've seen a lot of companies pitch it, but they all look kind of uncanny. Are y'all familiar with the term of the uncanny valley? Where it's like, even on the best ones, something just looks very off. And that's something that I've even tracked with people who've seen our ads, not just in the data, but they've come up to me and I'm like, so if like, here's the original and here's an AI version. They're like, wow, that AI version looks really weird. Why does that guy have 6 fingers? There's a gun coming out of that other gun. And, also on the creative side, and this is something that I was asked to put in by my wonderful colleague, Diana, who works with our art team at Bytro. She's actually a lead. And she said, and one thing she also wanted to mention is that when you try to go into these AI-generated assets, a lot of the time that you may be saving with the actual generation, if you want it to look good and not run ads that people are going to be like, wow, this company looks destitute, you're then going to actually be spending all that time or more anyways correcting the mistakes that AI made.
Can I just say thank you for that explanation? I'm an artist. I have fixed recently.
I feel your pain. I feel your pain so hard. And then, another thing as well I want to mention is the potential PR issues with that. Now, that said, am I saying, like, don't use ChatGPT to summarize meetings or stuff? No, we all do it. At least most folks I know. Like, come on. It's the easiest way to sum up, like, meeting notes and stuff. Now, we did try some internal AI tests. As you can see, these are from a tool called DID. This is my favorite one right here. I love how his hand just kind of melts into his face.
Thank you for the nightmare fuel.
But what I did find kind of interesting with that is that I do think it's interesting for voiceover, which I know also has its own issues, but at least for testing out new voiceover things, I do think it's very cool. And also I've experimented with cloning my own voice just because I thought it was interesting. So like not totally bad, but very, very, it can be very, very concerning. Now, let's go back to what I was talking about agencies, because this is I seem to have sent in a slightly earlier version of the presentation with some of the things out of order. Now, I talked about ad agencies we work with to support us, because of course, to get to that 52 a week number we were hitting at January for new concepts, if that was just 2 people, it would be insane. My wrists would probably have fallen off from spending that much time in After Effects. So we do actually work with several agencies, and this can even be good for iterating on concepts. So there's even some we work for, say, with more user-generated content style aspects, where it's like this has worked very well in the US or European tier 1 countries in English. Let's go ahead and localize it. Usually the big ones for that is French, German, Latin American, Spanish, and then believe it or not, but like taking an American English clip and then localizing it by just having a British actor, like, can really breathe new life into it sometimes. So I want to mention Bambassadors, who they actually have a thing called the Bambassadors Challenge, where you can upload a brief for what you want in your creative, and then they'll actually have UGC actors and content creators bid on that to make that, and that's pretty neat. Or, you can just set up a contract the old-fashioned way. If you get into marketing production, your person for that will know that. I also want to mention Superfaction, previously Creatits, who does 2D and 3D animation. Both have their perks. I will say I really love their 2D animation. You can see it right there because it just looks very... They've developed the style they've done with our games. I feel like it looks very clean and very almost glossy, and I just love it. Also, in terms of UGC, we've been recently working with Indigo Meerkat, which is actually a Europe-based creative studio, because we randomly tried... All right, here's another concept story. Of course, being like a risk-style game, like for grand strategy titles, one of the big things is conquering territories and building an empire, right? So they were like, yeah, you have free reign, come up with some concepts of your own to test. And the one that they made that was the best performer was one where a guy, like, he's holding up a map of his empire, and it's like kind of a small empire, and he just looks at his girlfriend and he says, size doesn't matter, right? And now they're localizing that. And then, of course, if you need to source actors and you say or just want to very quickly get your foot in the door without setting up anything majorly, Fiverr is a great place to start. And even now, I still sometimes go on there just to find weird concepts to try. Like, there's one ad we did a while back where it was one of those animators who animates for like those kids YouTube channels, like the Cocomelon style animations, and they made an ad where it was just tanks dancing. Again, you always got to be throwing ideas at the wall because sometimes they really do stick. And now I do want to mention some stats from December of last year, because I know it seems like I'm saying a lot, and a lot of it seems like you're, at the end of it, you're bringing this person or people onto your team to throw everything at the wall and take agency away from, say, agencies, but along with making communication easier between not just developing ads, but also, say, facilitating more communication between art and marketing, it really has been more productive for us. We're talking about a 525% increase in the number of testable ads on a weekly basis from the end of 2022 to the end of 2023. And then that went up even more in January of this year as we really ramped up testing more. Creatives peaked not at 32, they peaked at 32 last year, but then 52 this year. And that's not just variants of older clips, but that's new concepts, new UGC, new statics, new animations. And that's between myself and my team and the agencies we work with and facilitate creation with. And then what this also does is that this has also allowed us to see what people really gravitate towards and even inform some new game ideas, such as the Heroes update you saw for Supremacy, or even work we've put towards 2 new titles, which I'm not saying much about, this year, which has been very cool. Now, growing pains with bringing in a creative producer to your studio is inevitable. I would say that this is something that is really, now if you're a small studio, it's fine doing this yourself. I'd say consider this once you hit maybe the 15 to 20 people mark. But once you hit that point, do bring in a creative producer. Be utilizing existing art resources where you can. You'd be amazed at how far you can stretch concept art. And do use aggregate software to monitor how well your things are doing. Again, Apps Flyer Creative Tool. It's awesome. That said, don't overestimate the abilities of your team. If you use like a ticketing system for new ideas like we do, don't put in like dozens of ideas at once, because that's going to stress them, and then your creatives are going to need therapy. And then don't be vague in your communication. Clear, concise, and consistent. And to sum up, that is a text wall. Here's one of our UGC ads. You can read that. Feel free to take a picture. I feel like that last slide actually summed it up way better than this one did. Oh, are you taking a picture of that? I feel like I cut you off. I'm so sorry. We all good? So, sum up, I actually really love this, by the way. Something that you'll notice as well in a lot of our ads is that even though we have the really polished animation, something you'll notice in the UGC style ads, and this is something I probably should have mentioned, is this is actual real gameplay that we spend time, and we have an archive at the studio called Editing Assets Repository. And we literally have like several hundred gigabytes of gameplay recordings per game, because, you know, instead of making a new thing per ad, if someone's say talking about playing Supremacy and playing on the map where it's all the US states against each other, and you want Texas fighting against Florida, why record that new for the ad when we already have, you know, gameplay of that, and then we can just make the actor clip and the audio and such original. There's no shame in reusing resources. Wow, this was actually really good timing. I had a timer for here, and we are like 2 minutes to the 10-minute mark. Can I open it up to some questions? I'm going to go ahead and do that now, because in 15 minutes, I have to head to the airport.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So any questions? You have me for the next 15 or so. Yes.
I quite like the music of your ads.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, like, what did you use for that? Did you use an external platform? Did you work, I think they're very cinematic and Hollywood style, like, of the ads. So did you come up with that idea? How did you fit that part?
So music is actually really cool, and I could go for a while about sound mixing because I like nerding about it. But actually, there's 2 main sources. First off, we have our actual game soundtracks, which were I actually contracted out some professionals when those were done. I forget exactly who, but I think they did a fantastic job. However, what's really going to surprise you is that for a lot of the ads, we just have a subscription to a royalty-free library. And there's even some out there that are free where you can get music like this and just type in epic ad music. And because it's royalty-free, obviously you can use it as long as you, say, put credit where need be in your ads. For those, I'd recommend, say, looking at either Pexels or Pixabay. But we actually use and we also use Adobe stock libraries a lot as well. I know I complained about Adobe a lot, but I actually like their stock assets quite a lot.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any more? No?
Question?
Yes, ask away.
I don't remember in which part of your speech it appeared, but like how to bring this value of advertisement fees to the CEO, to the producer, or whatever, like the person that gives money for this stuff. Like you produce a lot of ads, and some obviously may not be successful. So, and like I would be afraid of this, pointing that this wasn't successful. Like, why do you waste this money? So, how to tell the value for the producer?
Actually, that's a great question. So a lot of what we do is rooted in user acquisition, which basically means that we are spending money on ads and then we are wanting to get that back over the course of whatever amount of time we want through, people downloading and playing the game and either watching ads in game or making in-app purchases. Because mobile. So with that, we actually get our budget set and then we allocate that budget. And for the more experimental ads, we literally just have part of that budget marked as testing. Because of course you want to iterate on the best performers, you want to work on what works. But I like to always operate with the idea of what works now won't necessarily work forever. So allocating a bit where we can for testing is how we do that. Because if something, say, we try something new and it doesn't work, but it just used the testing budget, then as odd as that sounds, that's okay because that was a test and now we know. Which is perhaps a very mobile mindset to go into it with.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Any more questions? If not, please admire my cat, Tiberius. He is an icon. That is in my office, by the way, because I am a child.
That's a super cute cat. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you.